everybody, and welcome to I'd say another episode of LitBox, but I think technically this is probably going to be our first episode again. We had a lot of technical difficulties in that last episode that we tried, and it went okay, but there's always room for improvement, so we're using this one to really nail it down. Anyway. This is LitBox, where myself, Charlie Oso, and my co-host, Zach Quinones, shine a light on the writing side of the entertainment industry. The side that actually gets a lot of shade probably thrown on it more than anything else, I guess. I mean, it's really like, if you had to think of like the dark alley of the writing or the entertainment industry, I think that writing would be it. Writers get really the shit into the stick most of the time.
Yeah, we're the most needed and disposable batch of people in pretty much every, not just like in entertainment, but also marketing. I mean, pretty much everything is the language of writing. So the most needed but most disposable.
Yeah, I mean, every movie, every
Billboard,
video game, it all starts with a writing project, right? I mean, it starts with an idea, and then that has to be translated into what you see visually, what ends up coming out as the final product. But there's a long process between the what gets put on the page and what you finally see, and I think that during that process, for sure, the writers just kind of get lost in the picture somewhere else, So that's what we hope to do. We hope to really kind of shine some light on the writers of today, let you know that we see you because we're right there with you. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about well, actually, I'll let you introduce it since this was your topic.
Why it's really hard. Why when people make video games into movies, why they suck. Or why they tend to suck a lot of times. I really can't think of a video game movie off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure there's one that I'm overlooking. The one that I enjoy because it kind of embraced the campiness of it, which was Street Fighter from back, with Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's a terrible movie, but I think it achieves a little bit of like that, like it's entertaining at the very least. The Mortal Kombat movies are also they're more nostalgic than anything. But as far as good video game movies, I can't really think of any particular one that stands out as, when I say good, I mean respectable among the film paradigm, so to speak. So it's like, if you want to translate like comic book movies, the original, not the original, but the 90s Batman with Tim Burton, the Dark Knight trilogy with Christopher Nolan, those are good comic book movies because they're respected among the peers, so to speak. I can't think of any video game movies that fit that realm. I might be overlooking it, but if I'm overlooking it, that should be kind of telling of how poor it's.
No,
I don't know. Like, there's a lot. I've thought about this. I had the wheels turning when we kind of discussed it. So I have some thoughts, but I want to hear what you have to say, because I know you're more actively into video games than I am, right? Like you play video games a lot more frequently, or is that board games?
I'm not gonna lie to you. If I play video games, it's usually like alongside my kids. I don't play video games necessarily like myself, just for my own amusement. But I'll play with my kids to spend time with them because that's what kids are doing these days, right? Playing video games.
What was the last video game you played that you were actually invested in?
So there's a series that I play, Borderlands. I've been a fan of Borderlands since the first one came out. It was like this like sleeper game that wasn't a really big. It didn't have a whole lot of marketing. It didn't have a whole lot of like tail behind it. But once people started playing with it and they started realizing, it was like a loot and shoot game. It had these really cool mechanics. It had these okay like character trees. Um, it was a good game, and obviously, it's spawned what three uh three successors after that. So I mean, that's saying something. Um, and I know. Okay, so getting into that, there is a Borderlands movie coming out. I mean, it was just a matter of time. you know, so um, how I feel about that is a little torn. Honestly,
Mm.
it's like, do I get excited about the possibility of this movie coming out and doing a really great job of the franchise, or do I just sit in complete and total dread as I start reading the production notes and the casting jobs and um, who's attached to the film in general, and trying to figure out if it's going to be good or not, because I honestly don't know.
Hmm.
I honestly don't know. Um, but I guess to answer your question from earlier, as far as having one good adaptation, one translation from video game um, to movie adaptation, I would have to say the only one that I think even holds a candle to what it originally was, and I'm probably going to get shit on for saying this, but Silent Hill.
That was one that slightly popped in my head. The only reason I didn't bring it up is because I'm not too. I know what the game is about, and I played it, but I'm not well versed enough to know if that hits the
Yeah,
standard.
and see,
But
I'm I'm not necessarily familiar with the game either. Like, it was a little bit before my time because it came out. If I'm not mistaken, it was more of, I want to say, it's a computer game. I think before anything else,
think so.
it was on computer before it was on console, and so there were a lot of people playing that. I was never a big PC gamer. I've never been a PC gamer. My computers are tools. Like, I work on them all the time. I don't have any more room on my computer to put games. my It will explode if I try and put more stuff onto my computer. Um, but I know that there was a atmosphere with um, with Silent Hill, and I know it was very dark. I know it was very eerie, and it created um, this really ominous atmosphere within the game. And I do feel like when I was watching the film that it created that atmosphere very well. To say that it had all the elements that the game has, I don't think that that's accurate at all. Um, but to say that that same feeling was there, I think that that's a fair point for sure.
Mm. Yeah, that one. That probably the same reason why that one popped in my head was because the atmosphere to me was the most consistent in terms of like how the game felt. From what I remember playing of the game to the film, but it wasn't a memorable film to me. It wasn't like when I saw Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, like I had to go see that movie. It's like stains on your memory. So that one I kind of thought of it, but I was like, it's not really one that I'd really. It took a while for me to kind of get to that game in my head. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I think. Well, before I get into that, what I also find interesting is there's a lot of movies that have been adapted into really good video games. Star Wars is one of them. It was a movie franchise. They adapted it into video games. Different types of series of video games that have been, at the very least, anywhere from good to great.
Hmm.
There's, I mean, comic book Spider-Man. I think was it on PlayStation when one of the first like Spider-Man video games came out? I
Yeah.
mean, they had some I think on like Nintendo 64, but like the first really big budget so to speak Spider-Man game that was really fucking popular. But it's just weird with that because even with novels and books they struggle to adapt those, but at least every now and then you can find a book adaptation that just like really lives up to the quality of the book to some extent. But with video
Yeah.
games, it's just I don't know. I mean, there's a few reasons why I think video games kind of suffer a little bit from the biopic syndrome, where there's so much when people particularly make biopics of like musicians and they have this long catalog, long life. It's like how do you really contain that into a 2 hour cohesive thing? And a lot of times you get stuff like that's entertaining, but there's either a lot of like fiction, historical or factual inaccuracies, or they gloss over some things that are more interesting but not really well known among the public crowd. So they go for more mainstream, accessible things. The Queen movie, Bohemian Rhapsody, kind of does that, or actually does that a lot. I think Walk the Line is that entertaining movies, but how do you? It's just so much going on in their life. It ends up being like a montagey type movie. So the like the music biopic, kind of falls into that that crutch as well because of video games. I don't know if you've ever seen like a finished script of a video game, particularly like a like a Last of Us type game. I mean, it's literally like 3 feet tall, and so it's it's
That
interesting because I feel like I feel like the big problem is just people writing the films have no, they're not video gamers, which I think if you're too much of a video gamer, it could be a detriment. But I feel like they don't play games at all, and so I think that's a big crutch. And then I also think because of the massive amount of just material that is covered in a video game, I think any approach you take, you're gonna piss off, especially the more popular game, you're gonna piss off a big enough demographic within that crowd that you're gonna warrant a backlash of some sort. But
okay.
I do think there's a
That's
lot of other reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a subject that I want to touch on in one of our other episodes is cancel culture and
Uh,
what it has done to the entertainment industry and writing in general. You can say anything now, and all of a sudden everything changes because that actor can't be in the film anymore, or and it's the cancel culture is real and it's scary. Um, but like I said, we can hopefully we can do an episode on that at some point in time too.
yeah, for sure. There's actually a few examples of that I'll bring up when we do talk about it. Um, so yeah, that's a good one for next time.
For
But
sure. So you said that the writers weren't video games or video
I
gamers.
I feel like that's part of it. I can't speak for every single adaptation, but like an example would be when Neil I can never say his name correctly. I always call him Neil Blumpkin, but it's not Blumpkin. It's
Uh huh.
Blomkamp, I think, who did
Yeah.
District 9 when he was getting ready to do Halo. And that got a lot of buzz because when he did his sizzle reel, which was actual original footage that he was filming for it, and people were saying it was just such an accurate depiction of Halo and exactly how they pictured a Halo movie to be. Of course, things fell through, a bunch of things happened, but the he was like a fan of Halo, and he wasn't. I don't think he wasn't like a hardcore, like obsessive Halo person, but he was just he loved playing the game. It was something he was really just kind of like, oh, I can do this because I know the game so well. I know how to present it, and so he's the closest thing that we would have gotten to like possibly a very well made video game film. The other one that was kind of more recent is Assassin's Creed, which I think the dude that was in the movie Shane and Hunger, and he was Michael Fassbender.
Hmm.
I think he was a fan of the game, but he was like a very, very, very casual fan. And I also believe that because he was such a casual fan, he took too much liberty. I believe in some of the things with the film, and he didn't write it. So the writers that were coming on, I don't think they were really that familiar with the film. And in Hollywood, a lot of writers to get jobs, they'll say like, "Oh, I'm such a fan of that film or a fan of that video game," but they've never played it. They're just like a fan of it, spiritually.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that movie was it was basically ass. It got like three out of 10 on IMDb or something. It got like destroyed by critics and fans. And
I mean, we can look at like Monster Hunter right now too, right? I haven't
uh,
gone to see it because of Corona, obviously,
yeah,
but one, it's what Paul W.S. Anderson, right?
okay,
He already
really,
killed. He already killed the Resident Evil franchise. Like
yeah,
that was, that was ass. I'm not gonna lie about that.
mhm,
And so Monster Hunter is actually a pretty cool game. As a gamer, like I will tell you, that was something that I was interested in for a little bit. I did play some Monster Hunter for a little bit. It's it's really cool. You get to go, you get to kill, you get on this island, you have really not a lot of weapons, and you go out and you kill these monsters, and as you kill these monsters you start scavenging parts from them to create bigger and better weapons.
mhm,
So the larger the monster you kill, the more equipment that you're able to take with you and create these things. So it's pretty awesome. um when I heard that he was directing it, i I lost all hope. I'm not gonna lie. I lost all hope for the movie.
yeah,
um and part of me wants to know, like, why, if you have a fan base that really likes your game, in the instance of Resident Evil, everybody knows, everybody who played those games knows that he just did his own thing.
mhm,
Like, there was no cohesive storyline with those movies really that matched anything that was going on with the game. It was like a cameo of a character here
mhm,
and a mention of something that was going on here, and that was really it. So it was like, here's your Easter eggs, basically. Like, let's go hunt the shit out of some Easter
yeah,
eggs, right? And so when you alienate the audience like that, who enjoys the game, why would you give another video game adaptation to the same director, knowing that that's probably what's going to end up happening, right?
uh-huh,
I haven't seen Monster Hunter, so I can't really say, like that it's awesome. That I can't give an honest judgment of it. But what I can say is that every review that I have read thus far tells me it is an ass movie. It is terrible. I mean, you know, you can say what you want about China not wanting to play it because of the racial slur that was in it, but
mhm.
honestly, I think that was just a cop out. I think that China just flat out said, "Don't bring this shit to our theaters. We're better than this." That's just according to the reviews that I've read. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. One
They're
day
not
I'll
gonna
read the
make money
reviews.
off of
One day
it.
I'll
Yeah.
actually go see the movie. But until then, this is what I have to work with. So
Mhm.
I I don't know. Is it the writers, or is it the people with the money? Is it the companies that say, we're going to take this idea? We know that even if it's a shit movie, we're going to make money off of it regardless.
Mhm.
And I mean, where does the blame really lie? Because as a writer, if I'm attached to an adaptation, I know that I know that Hollywood kind of squeezes this out of you, right?
Mhm.
But you want to stay as true to the material as possible,
Mhm.
but at the same time you want to make money. You don't want to get fired.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I definitely think, yeah, because now that I think about it, because there's plenty of writers that have written adaptations of books that they've never read and have done a very good job of it because they do the research. So I definitely think, yeah, that probably is a big part of like the sort of machine kind of coming in. And I mean, you could do the research all you want. You can play the video game for 10 hours a day, to prep yourself to write it. But if the studio's like, hey, we need this like this big elaborate chase scene or something to happen, and you're like, well, the video game doesn't really, it's not really that doesn't really happen in the video game. There's no really, you kind of get put in the bind because they can just fire you and bring somebody else in. The other thing too, that you brought up in terms of dang, what did you just say right now? Sort of the Resident Evil and like the Easter egg thing. Uh, that's kind of like, oh, basically, whatever the guy's name who did Resident Evil, how the director attached can play a big role in there. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when he comes on set, he can just change, maybe not directly on set, but going into production, he could just decide to do his own thing. And just kind of how he did with the Resident Evil stuff, he just kind of did his own thing. Or, probably with Monster Hunter, he probably did his own thing and just did these little Easter egg cameo type things to tie it all together and to make it the brand. This isn't quite a video game, but there's a book uh, by O'Brien. I always get his first name wrong, but I'm 99% sure it's Dan O'Brien, The Things They Carry. And it's a really, really popular book. Are you familiar with it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're making it into a movie. And I'm reading the press release, and it's like the writer's like I looked up the writer, solid writer. So I'm like, okay, first obstacle, good. Then they cast in like Robert Pattinson, um, the guy from Whiplash. They're casting all these like good ass actors. And then they waited till the fucking very end, and it's like directed by Rupert Sanders, the guy who did Snow White and the Huntsman, the fucking really shitty movie with
Oh
the girl
man.
from Twilight.
Uh-huh.
And it was the girl from Twilight and the guy from it was like Liam Neeson or Liam Hemsworth or one of the no Liam
Yeah,
Hemsworth,
yeah, yeah.
but he directed that movie. The movie was fucking terrible. So in the press release they left his name out of it to the very last line. And as soon as I read that, I have like no intention of going to see it because I'm just like this guy. It doesn't matter how good these actors are. It doesn't matter how good he's gonna fuck it up. He's gonna fuck it up, and it's just he's just gonna ruin it. He's not gonna be true to the book.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably another big part of it. I think yeah, it's just such there's so many elements involved with making a movie that but it's also kind of weird because so much is involved in terms of video games as well. So many moving parts, so many people. So I think it's just a cultural disconnect somewhere. Because I even think with novels, there's still some sort of crossover, but video games really is its own culture and its own. They don't need film really necessarily to thrive and survive. While novels, especially writers who are primarily novelists, some of them have made the most money by crossing over into film, whether as screenwriters or having their work adapted or optioned off into film or TV. So
Yeah.
there's a reliability there. But with video games, it's like they're a multi-billion-dollar business. They don't fucking need film and entertainment. If anything, they're doing film and entertainment a favor by trying to
Yeah.
bring in their demographic. And I thought of another game that I think, but again, it's just kind of gone with the wind. Is the World of Warcraft game, the movie. That
Mm.
was the thing that didn't really have. It had like a balance of negative and positive, and I never really kind of got a grasp of was this a good movie or not? Because the director who did it was a genuine fan. Like he played the game. He was like people played
Yeah.
against him in the game, and apparently from many reports, he was very true to the material as best as he could make it, given that it's a Hollywood big budget film. And there were apparently a substantial amount of fans of the game that enjoyed the movie. Some,
Yeah.
and a considerable amount that didn't, but that's been probably the most recent one that wasn't just completely negative.
And
So,
I'll say, if I'm flipping through the channels, and World of Warcraft is on, I'm gonna watch it. I enjoyed it, but that's because I'm a super nerd anyway, and
uh-huh.
so that whole fantasy thing, it gets me. Um, So I mean, that's another thing. There's so well. First, I want to go back to what you were saying about the director. Okay, you said it was
Sanders.
Rupert Sanders. So here's my thing on that. With Paul W. Is it Paul W. S. Anderson? I think I can't remember. Paul
Something
W.
like that,
Anderson.
yeah.
Yeah. So we should probably know these people's names like before we start talking trash about
Hey, if you make a trash movie, you don't deserve to be known.
them. So talking about like you know the beginnings of things. Do you know like if that guy made any other films before he made Snow White and the Huntsman or whatever?
He did make another film. It was kind of like a known film. It wasn't some obscure thing. And it wasn't terrible,
Hmm.
but it didn't warrant him to get $100 million
Yeah,
to bang his actress and get caught. So, yeah. That's what happened. You remember that?
no, I didn't know. I didn't know
It
that.
was I can't remember that lady's name who's the main chick in Twilight. Her name escapes me, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
She was
yeah.
dating Robert Pattinson at the time. She was doing that
Kristen
movie.
Stewart.
Yeah. And they got snapped some photos of the Rupert Sanders and her canoodling somewhere in some like dark corner. Press released them, and
Wow.
Robert Pattinson like basically like they broke up or whatever. But yeah, I mean that got more press than the actual movie.
Yeah, because I don't remember hearing about that, to be honest. Yeah, I remember hearing about like the first one.
Uh-huh.
There was a first movie, I think, right? Snow White something, and
Yeah,
then Snow White and the Huntsman, I think, came afterwards, but I don't
yeah,
remember it very much. Okay, so then I mean, if he made something, beforehand, then at least he already was in the industry. Because where I was going with that was basically Quentin Tarantino. You know, his first film was not really his first film. He sold it, right? And then it it got made and he basically lost everything, that had to do with it, more or less.
hmm
And so it just like I said, I think there's a lot to do with the machine coming in and crushing you at first and saying, well, yeah, you're going to make a film, but really it's us making the film and you're just going to do what the hell we tell you to do, right?
yeah,
And then after that, you get success, you get a little money, and then you're like, okay, well now I can kind of choose what I want to do now. I have a little power, and I can kind of say, yeah, I want to do this, but I have a little leverage here. I've done this, I've done something before, and now I can kind of tell you how we're gonna do it. I can put my opinions in there. Whereas, like, this guy who made the Resident Evil movies, no, he's made six freaking movies already, and they all, they were not good, and now we're giving him another one. Like, there's just no excuse for that anymore. It's
yeah,
definitely him,
hmm
definitely him.
yeah,
So, maybe the things they carried will be good. Maybe that guy just had his balls squeezed the whole time, like they were just in a
yeah,
vice the entire time, and so he didn't get to have any creative input whatsoever. And
hmm
I don't know, but
yeah. It's a dicey
then
game,
again,
but I think you bring up a good point. You kind of have to like. I guess you're allowed to have one, maybe two flops or two bad movies, but at some point you have to like you have to cancel those out with a good movie. I think a good example for a guy is the guy who wrote Arrival. Uh,
mhm.
he had done a couple. He had written one or two other movies before that were terrible, and he wrote Arrival. So it's like, okay, like I don't know what happened with those first two, but clearly you can write a really good fucking movie. Maybe you could give some extra credit to the fact that he had Denis Villeneuve directing it. So, but it's a combination, I guess, of a lot of things. Because a guy like that wouldn't attach himself to direct a movie if he didn't think the script was good, at the very least. So yeah, but going back to like video games, yeah, I'm thinking back to Resident Evil. I believe it was the PlayStation 1, the first PlayStation, and Resident Evil took place on an island in a laboratory. Is that correct? Do you
Uh,
remember?
so it took place in a laboratory, and
Got
then
parachuted into like a forest or a jungle, right? Or is it that Resident Evil
wow,
2? They're
yeah,
gonna fucking kill us. Anybody who's a fan of that game is gonna fucking kill us.
yeah.
They're gonna come to our house and kill us.
Well, Resident Evil 2, you're up on the surface. You're in Raccoon City,
Okay.
trying to get out of the city. So like the first one's all about the laboratory and like getting through that.
That's has to be the one because I remember there was one Resident Evil game I was really into, and you get parachuted into a jungle. You have to go to the laboratory, and it's been taken over by mutated dinosaurs. Is that correct? Does that sound familiar? Or am I thinking of a completely different fucking game? You know what? We're just gonna say it's Resident Evil for the sake of getting the fucking point across, okay?
Mutated dinosaurs.
But anyways, this was a game, okay? This was a game that was like, it took me hours to fucking play and finish. And if they were to make that into a movie, you wouldn't have to, because I played games like that, Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross. I played both of those games,
Yeah,
and when I think about, it, I'm like, you can make a really good ass movie out of those games. All you have to really do is just copy the fucking game. And I think with some of these movie adaptations, they try to put their own sauce on it. It's like, oh, like, we want to make sure that like we have our identity because I think there's a bit of arrogance with when it comes to film industry that they have to have their fingerprints, like their DNA in something. Like, no, we can make this better than what the it's
yeah,
like, no, you can't. Like Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross, they're fucking you can't make it better. It's considered, one of the best games of all time. And it would be like, if they were making Zelda Ocarina of Time, if they were adapting that into a film and they try to add their own sauce to it, you're kind of like, no, like, it was perfect the way it was. Just make it look cool and just give us the meat and potatoes, no fat type of thing. Because even with Chrono Cross, it took me fucking forever to finish that game. And even as long as it took me and as all the stuff, off the top of my head, even though I haven't played that game in probably 20 years, because I was maybe in middle school when I was playing that game.
yeah,
I could still just be like, oh, this is the movie you can make from it. You know, from Village, gaining powers, solving finding the friends and all that, battling it out with the main villain, getting and it's basically Lord of the Rings if you think about it, just sort of like the stages of things. And that might be another thing too, is making like an Assassin's Creed movie, make it into a trilogy instead of making it into this 2 hour thing where you're just kind of like, oh, as long as we have the costumes and the stunts and the superpowers, like they'll be fine.
yeah.
And
It's it's hard to get that three-peat deal though. You know, I mean, even like Pirates of the Caribbean.
that was
That
a fucking ride. That was an amusement park.
you're right. You're right. But the Black Pearl um, had to be. It had to. When you watch the movie, there is no setup for a sequel. Really, I mean, there's the
Mm-hmm.
possibility of one. There is an open ending kind of thing where you've created this world and there's more that can come from it. But the show itself, like you can watch that and it's a story in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Then later on, you have the other two that come in, and of course, the second one has to feed into the third one because at that point they said, "Hey, we've got a success on our hands. Here's some more money. Um, let's go ahead and make that trilogy now." So with with the movie industry, I can understand that the first one that you make has to be able to stand on its own in case that you don't get the trilogy out of it because nobody could just walk in like Peter Jackson and be like, "Hey, I want to make Lord of the Rings. Give me 3 movies to do it." You
Hmm.
know, that's a you just don't hear about that. That's a once in a lifetime kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that you're absolutely right in that you need more time to tell a story because for me especially I think that that's where the biggest disconnect in these movies comes in is that you have these fully immersive video games that people spend 15, 20 hours playing and you want to try and squeeze all of that storytelling all of those elements into a 2-hour block and you really have to decide which of those elements is the most important and which can you leave out that will basically just leave you the essence of what the video game was, not much more than that, not much more than the essence, just that. And I think that they'll continue doing that because they know that there's a fan following and they know that as much as I'm like dreading that Borderlands movie, I know I'm going to go watch it.
Hmm.
I mean, I can't help it. You know, I want to see what they've done, and I want to make sure that I would love for it to succeed and for it to be like another another way for me to connect with that intellectual property that I love with the
Hmm.
Borderlands saga. You know, and if they do a great job with it, awesome. And if they don't, then you know, I'll write a scathing review about it later, I guess. But it's just now creating these stories that are 2 hours long and hoping that you're going to get the same thing out of it. I think that that is where the biggest failure is in video game adaptations. Really.
Hmm. You know what I think Rupert Sanders also directed? Like 90% positive? Ghost in a Shell.
Ghost in the Shell is a great film. Anything with Scarlett Johansson is a great film.
I'm almost certain he directed that. Yeah. Which I think that was apparently a step up from Snow White and the Huntsman. So,
I'll say so. It was aesthetically pleasing.
mhm. And that is
Um,
kind of that is his thing too. Like he's more of a Michael Bay-esque filmmaker than he is like a David Fincher or but yeah,
and even
the
Michael Bay gets his, you know, got his day in the sun. Um, I mean, he got something right, I think. What was it? 13 Hours was actually, I would say it's actually a pretty damn good film.
yeah, when Michael Bay when he those are essentially kind of his passion projects, which is not really because he's Michael Bay, so it's not passion
He
project
can
is
make
something
whatever
that
he wants. Yeah.
yeah, it's something that you have struggled, but when he does movies like that, The Rock, Pain and Gain, he tends to be a little bit more of a filmmaker. You see more finesse, I guess.
Mhm.
He actually won Cannes Film Festival with a commercial that he did like early in his career. So he
Nice.
definitely has like filmmaker chops, but he from people that I know that know him to different capacities said that basically he just like he's the equivalent of somebody who is like top pick in high school for basketball, and then he realized, you know what? I'm a really good 3-point shooter. I'm just going to be a shooting guard. I don't want to be Kobe. I don't want to be. I probably, even if he was never going to be that great, he could still come close to that. But that
Yeah.
he at least had the intuitive talent to be like he could be like a David Fincher or something kind of close to that. But that he just realized, oh, I'm really good at like budget and like being on time with like my film cuts and like just good relate. With studios, I'll just fucking do that. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like he had that realization apparently, uh, and was just like, why try to be this great thing when I can make so much money doing something just efficiently? So
Yeah. That
yeah,
makes sense. I
but
mean, if you find your rut, go ahead and stay in it. You know,
mhm.
And if it's bringing you success, more power to you for sure. I can tip my hat to that
Yeah,
for sure.
I can't knock it. Can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
but I don't know, man. I think I don't know that there will ever be a good formula for video game adaptations to be successful in the film industry. I think the only way that you're going to have a good video game adaptation is if you give it enough room to breathe, and really that's going to be in a series. That's the only way that you're going to
mhm.
get a good adaptation.
You know who I think could make a really good video game adaptation movie? And I can't pronounce his name correctly, but Taiki Wakiki. He did a Thor Ragnarok, Jojo Rabbit. I think with the right type of game, I think he could. I think he can do. I think he can do a justice of a 2 hour film that's really good for a
Yeah,
video game. I think he's really the only person off the top of my head that could pull it off. I think he would make a great because they're supposed to do a Bioshock movie, and the whole world and atmosphere and just the storyline of like the first of like the Bioshock Infinite and the first Bioshock where Rapture takes place. So fucking like that is that like if you were to like harness that into a really good film, man,
yeah.
you'd blow the fucking people away. But they'll probably fucking have Rupert Sanders do one of those too. So it's that's gonna be like Rupert
Let's give it to
Sanders
James
and
Cameron.
yeah,
Maybe maybe he can do something with it.
yeah, that's true. James, that's his bag right there. And he did just film a bunch of shit underwater for Avatar. So
Yeah,
maybe the first Bioshock, he could probably do it, and he would be a good balance of like accessible mainstream, but also like Alien 2 is like Alien 2 and Terminator 2 is just like the perfect balance of
yeah,
it's not dumbed down, but it's very accessible. So
yep.
yeah,
I think that'd be a good fit
you
for
know, a
sure.
video game movie I really love, even though it's a terrible movie, but it's only terrible because they attached it to the video game. If they would have never attached it to the video game, same exact movie, and just called it something else, Super Mario Brothers. And they just called that like Plum for like short for plumber or something. That movie, it would have gotten a lot more positive reviews.
I will watch that movie just for John Leguizamo. I will watch anything that John Leguizamo is on. He's he holds a special place in my heart, so I can't say that if that show is on, I will not watch it for sure.
But yeah, but because it's Super Mario Brothers and it's just like
Yeah,
it's just yeah, it's
a
too
lot of people
weird.
don't even know that that film exists.
Oh
Will
yeah,
tell you.
it's when you bust that out, it like fucking it's like Plato's caveman. It just alters their fucking perception of reality. It's like what?
I can see that.
It's like
Oh man,
you've seen the trailer for the movie Tiptoes.
I have not.
So Tiptoes is a movie that came out in the '90s. Stars Gary Oldman, Matthew McConaughey, and I think Julia Roberts. And it's about and Peter Dinklage. So the movie is called Tiptoes because Matthew McConaughey is getting married, and he's scared, nervous, or whatever to introduce who I believe is Julia Roberts to his family. And the reason why is because his family are dwarfs, and his brother is a dwarf, but his brother isn't Peter Dinklage. His brother is Gary Oldman, and Gary Oldman plays a dwarf. And I guess they didn't have the budget for prosthetics. He is literally on his knees for the whole movie, and you can tell
Wow.
he's on his knees. And this was like a $10 million movie when they made it,
Oh
and it's
my
called
gosh.
Tiptoes. He plays the lead dwarf role, and Peter Dinklage is a side character.
What is that called? Because I can't even think of the term right now, but they're getting a lot of that too. You know, hiring,
Oh,
giving people the lead
appropriation.
roles that don't.
It's like
that don't
yeah, like
fit.
cultural appropriation and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, that's another thing that we can touch on too. You know, how do you write when you've got to take into account just the casting? You know,
Mhm. Oh
um,
yeah, especially nowadays when even the last 2 years when I've been writing, it's been a big thorn on my side. I'll tell you that. It's
yeah,
it's not a lot of I think that a lot of people don't understand that that kind of stuff, and I'm not going to get too into it because we'll talk about it later. It's more damaging than it is helpful from multiple perspectives. And but yeah, we can talk about that later. But
yeah. I think
that's a big thorn on the side.
I do agree. I think that there is a level of innocence to people who are not in the industry,
Hmm.
who who can say things like that, who can kind of basically throw rocks at the glass house that we live in. But yeah, we can touch on that another time for sure. But for now, I think that we are completely out of time. We have, uh, I think, pretty much brought this to a close. Um,
Hmm.
I think we can both agree that video game adaptations is something that's very hard to do, and unless that you have the room to do it in, I don't think that you're going to get it done. Or unless you have, a director who a has the power to make it into
Hmm.
something good, and b um, the the list of films behind them, that says they're going to do a good job. Also,
Hmm.
I think unless you get all of those things, you're going to end up probably with a flop, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
cool, cool. Well, awesome. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will do this every Friday, probably around this time, 6 p.m. So tune in next time, and we'll see you then. Until then, have a good night.